What is going on, everyone? Welcome 32. It's another episode of Beyond the Tape. Not even 12 hours after the last episode, which, by the way, if you missed that, my first round grades are out and live now. So if you want to hear my thoughts on the 32 picks we got on Thursday night, definitely go back and check out that episode of Beyond the Tape. Today, we're doing a day 2 mock draft. I don't actually have any trades in here, but we'll talk about some points where I do think maybe this team would be, a contender to move down and who might come up in their spot. But I'm giving you a second and third round continuation, really pumped up for day 2 of the draft, which, I think is about 8 hours away from getting underway. So let's waste no time. Let's jump right into it. With the Cleveland Browns kicking us off, I'm going to have them take Shedeur Sanders. I don't think it's a guarantee he goes here at 33. But I do think it's sound process. You have two guys that could play for you in the immediacy, and you don't have to rush Sanders out there if you don't feel like, hey, the translation from Colorado to the NFL level is fully ready for him to hit the field, or maybe you want to wait till the dome. I don't know. Who knows? But I do think this is some sound process. That being said, if he is not the pick here at 33, there were a lot of cameras on Shedeur last night. There's going to be even more on him today because we don't go here at 33. Like, who's the team that makes the move for Sanders? Or, who stays pat and where does it go? So it could be really interesting, but I do think this is some sound process, and I do think he's a fantastic scheme fit for Kevin Stefanski. And if you look at the quarterbacks he's worked with in the past, there's a lot to Shedeur's game that matches up with that. So I'm going to go with Sanders there at pick number 33. Houston Texans, they trade back out of the first round. I'm going to give them Mariante Ursery. Left, could potentially train him to play over on the right side. Could also play guard for you for a year. But really, I'm thinking long-term here. Cam Robinson's only there for a season. Ursery, I think, is your long-term left tackle. Like him a little bit more in a zone scheme. I think Nick Haley's going to come over, and it's going to be more gap-focused, but I do think Ursery has good pound-for-pound muscle. He is a big guy, 6'6". I do think he can fit into that well enough, especially if you are giving him a developmental year. I think you can kind of get him to the spot where you need him to be. So I think that's the Houston Texans' long-term play there at tackle. I thought about Luther Burden. I said I'm going to have him go to the Titans here. This one makes too much sense. You make Calvin Ridley your X, you play Burden at the Z, and then if there is the God, please give us Xavier Restrepo and Cam Ward 2.0, just at the NFL level. Like, make that happen in the 4th or 5th round. And I think that's a really solid receiving core there in Tennessee. But love what Burden brings to this offense. Great compliment to Calvin Ridley, who is not going to give you much after the catch. Burden brings you that and then some. To the Cleveland Browns here at 36. We're going to have Mike Green come off the board. I think, hand of the dirt, pass rusher, Green, probably the better fit between him and Ezeraku here. Just, comes down to the off-the-field stuff. Clearly, it was a bigger deal than, I was making it out to be in the pre-draft process. Guys like him, Will Johnson, Ezeraku, all falling out of the first round was a bit surprising to me. Especially Green, top 16 player on my board. I think he was player number 16 off the top of my head. So, big surprise there. But, I think this is day 1, like your next best edge rusher opposite of Myles Garrett. So, hard to deny this. It just comes down to how they feel about the character and the off-the-field stuff. But in the second round, I think they should be willing to take that shot. Same is true here for Will Johnson with sending the Raiders. I mean, this is, I've had mock drafts where he went 6 overall, 4 and 5 months ago. Obviously, the knee injury is a pretty big deal to teams for him to fall out of the first round. That and, reports of high 4.5s into the 4.6s with his 40 and his, lead up to a potential running a 40 at a pro day. So the speed and the injury are definitely some concerns here. But again, second round, I think your risk appetite is, it should be worthwhile because if Will Johnson doesn't have a catastrophic knee injury that potentially ruins his long-term career, you're getting an absolute steal here at 37 at an absolute huge position of need for the Raiders. And a guy who, Patrick Graham, their DC, is going to mix it up in their zone coverages. Will Johnson, especially with the 40 concerns, definitely a zone coverage guy, and he can kind of fit into all that. Cover 2, cover 3, cover 4, I think he fits into all of it. So I'd be willing to take a shot here on 37 if I'm the Raiders. I'm a team looking at Will Johnson, and then hopefully he stays healthy, which, the thing is with the draft, all these guys are one play away from, having their careers come to a close. Johnson, obviously, with his knee injury, sounds like there's a higher likelihood that could happen versus someone else with a clean billing history, a clean bill of health. There we go. That's the phrase. But that being said, 37, too good of a player to let him slide past you here. The New England Patriots, Jaden Higgins. I mean, all my mocks, the last couple of ones that we uploaded, Will Campbell, Jaden Higgins. So let's make the dream come true. Let's fulfill the prophecy. This is your big body, big catch radius, middle of the field guy that they just don't have. That X receiver that they just don't have. And I think by adding him to the room, it makes Polk look that much better. Pop Douglas, Javon Baker if he gets on the field. So I think this just kind of shuffles that room into the right place. Stephon Diggs, of course, as well. So I like this and what it does for May, for that offense, and all the other guys in that receiver room. Chicago Bears here at 39. I'm going to go with Quinshon Judkins. I think he's just a great scheme fit for Ben Johnson's offense. Nice little compliment. Solid pass catcher too, so you can use him there. But I think a good compliment to Roschon Johnson, as those two guys will probably be your bell cows, leading the way when it comes to the rushing attack. And then also, again, Judkins, pretty solid pass catcher, but I think Swift's probably got him there. So you're looking at a three-headed monster of Judkins, Johnson, Swift. I think they all complement each other. Judkins and Swift probably the more explosive of the three. But play strength and how hard these guys run, give me Johnson and Judkins. So, again, they all just kind of have similar overlaps, but also complement each other really, really well. But I would say sooner rather than later, Judkins becomes the top guy in that running back room. So, and I love what he could, how he fits into that Ben Johnson offense, like I said. New Orleans Saints, there were reports that they had pretty equal grades on Sanders, Shough, and Dart. So I totally understand that process of, we see all three of these guys pretty similarly. Once two guys are off the board, we can start thinking about maybe we want to move up, maybe we want to make a play. And in this instance, Sanders gone, Dart went round one, so Tyler Shough fell right in your lap. And, it sounds like Kellen Moore has got, at least a year's worth of a leash here. They're not going to hold this year against him too much. So just Shough versus Rattler. Best man wins the job, and we see how far we can go with that into the year one of Kellen Moore era. So I think this is just good process. I gave it a B+ for Kelvin Banks. That's a solid foundation laying pick. Solidify that offensive line. Totally makes sense. Kellen Moore, look at his stops along the way, and the emphasis on offensive line in Dallas and in Philadelphia specifically. So it totally makes sense. And now you get the opportunity to, hey, Shough fell into your lap. Again, good process. We're willing to take a swing of the bat at the quarterback spot here at 40. And that's kind of what Nick Underhill, a lot of Saints beat reporters were saying. If they're going to go quarterback, I would expect it more at 40 rather than 9. So hopefully that's how it plays out, and hopefully I get this pick right. All right, let's get on to the Chicago Bears at 41. I'm going to go Donovan Ezaraku. Dennis Allen's typically hand in the dirt kind of, edge rushers, but I think you're willing to make an exception here for Ezaraku, who, again, in my opinion, should have gone in the first round. Top 20 player on my board. Love me some Donovan Ezaraku. So they also have Dayo Odedingbo, Montez Sweat right there. So you could also ease Ezaraku in. Maybe he's just your third down DPR type. And Odedingbo and Sweat do the early down stuff. But nevertheless, that's a really nice solid trio. And if Ezaraku is just going to fall into your lap at 41, sign me up for that. I did think about him for 40, but I did want to give the Saints a swing of the bat at quarterback. And also the Saints, re-signing Chase Young. Already have Granderson there. Still have Cam Jordan playing. They could definitely find that next guy, that successor on the defensive line for sure. So Ezaraku was certainly in consideration there, especially Staley. You're going to have those guys standing up a little bit more. I think that's part of the reason I'm expecting this might be a breakout season ahead for Chase Young, potential famous last words right there. But I do think Ezaraku and Young as a stand-up edge rush tandem could be a lot of fun. So thought about it, but instead want to give the Saints quarterback, giving the Bears a great value there with Ezaraku at 41. All right, to the Jets. I'm going to stick with what I had in my mock. Mason Taylor. They went Membu in the first round. One of the, I think it was 8. Might have been 9, but I think it was 8. Exact player, team, and pick number picks that I nailed in my mock draft. So love to see that. And hopefully it rolls in the second round. If you're not going to go Tyler Warren at 7, I totally understand it because you're looking at your second round options and saying Taylor, Arroyo, either one. We're content with them. And I'm going to have one go here at 42 and then the other one come off the board here in a few picks. If you like, Arroyo at tight end 3 over Taylor, you can totally flip them. I think both options are super appealing to the teams that I'm going to have them go. But Taylor, I think that's your upgrade at tight end for Taylor Engstrand, Aaron Glenn, and co. in New York. All right, to the 49ers. I'm going to go Trey Amos. This was probably a position need that I neglected too much in my mock drafts. But you look at their cornerback room, they could definitely use one more guy on the outside. And Trey Amos, Robert Saleh started to run more man coverage with the Jets because he had the horses to run that race, right? You have Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed. Yeah, we'll play a little bit of man coverage with those guys, right? So Amos definitely fits the billing there. So if Saleh wants to carry that over as he returns to San Francisco, play a little bit more man coverage, Amos has got the goods for that. But he's also really taken huge steps forward, and what he is as a zone coverage defender, he's always communicating. That's the biggest thing to me. That to me tells me you're going to keep growing in that regard. With those long arms, solid ball skills, ton of playing experience under his belt. Him on the outside, sign me up for that. And then you can keep Lenoir, ideally, in the nickel, too. So, I like what that does for that secondary all in all in San Francisco. Obviously, with Charvarius Ward gone, there's a pretty big opening there. Amos falls right in your lap. Hard not to love. Dallas Cowboys, same pick I had in my mock draft. I'm going to go Travion Henderson here. Javonte Williams, since the knee injury, just not the same explosive guy. Miles Sanders, I just don't see juice in him in general. So Henderson this is your home run threat. And also, in a perfect world, Henderson's about a 15 touch a week guy. And since they already have a Sanders and Javonte Williams, you're kind of putting Henderson in an offense that would utilize him on that type of scale. And I think that's just where you're going to get the best of Henderson. That's where you're going to get the most explosive version of him, keep defenses honest, but get this guy into space, use him as a pass catcher. And also, Dak Prescott coming off a season-ending injury, right? Like, maybe the best pass protector in this class, and TreVeyon Henderson, of all the running backs at least. Makes a lot of sense there, where you're like, hey, Dak, got hurt last year. Let's go ahead and further put some resources to protect our investment, right? Like TreVeyon Henderson is that from a pass pro standpoint. So love that fit all in all. Would have loved him to go to the Broncos too. So I thought about maybe I'll do a trade here, but it's just impossible to predict day 2 trades. And once you start with one, you're opening a can of worms, and this would have been like 7 trades deep. And let's just talk about best players available and potential fits for these guys. Colts at 45. I'm going to go Carson Schwessinger here. I do think Lou Anarumo is going to want to add to that linebacker room. It's a sneaky need, and I do think in a perfect world he would like to blitz a little bit more with those linebackers. Kind of got away from that the last 2 years at Cincy. Schwessinger, I think, unlocks the ability to kind of fall back to where he was those first 2 years in Cincinnati, using his linebackers as pass rush threats. So Schwessinger, and if you're going to blitz your linebackers, Schwessinger is an absolute scheme fit. So I really like that a ton. Rams, this is where we're going to have the other tight end come off the board, Elijah Arroyo. A lot of reports were that they wanted to move up for Brock Bowers last year. They wanted to move up and try to get Colston Level in this year. Well, if you couldn't do that, let's go get the second-round version of that player in Elijah Arroyo. And really, the reason Arroyo's in the second round, and he's not as good of a player as Loveland, let me just state that, but if Elijah Arroyo didn't miss 2022 and 2023 with injuries, like how high could he have potentially gone? Like maybe he's a sleeper pick for the Eagles at the end of the first round, right? Like, we had Todd McShay talking, Mason Taylor, keep an eye on that. They're going to trade Goddard, keep an eye on it. I think if Arroyo has a clean bill of medical history, there we go, maybe that's a possibility for him to go in the first round. So I think, that's the gamble here. Is Arroyo going to be able to stay healthy throughout his career? Again, like I said earlier, all these guys are one play away. But if they covet a Brock Bowers, they covet a Colston Loveland, I'd want to take a shot here on Elijah Arroyo. Still a smooth route runner, really fluid athlete. And if he's healthy, like he was this last year at Miami and at the Senior Bowl, he could be a really fun piece to that offense to add to the mix. So I like that fit a lot. Again, you could flip him and Mason Taylor. I think the Rams would like Mason Taylor in a lot of ways too. So you can't really go wrong there. To the Arizona Cardinals, going to stick with what I had in my last mock. I'm going to go Jalen Noel. This is just a wide receiver room that needs more oomph, to it, more juice, more big playability. Michael Wilson's great X. Marvin Harrison can play some X, he can play some Z, you can move him around. I'd love to see them diversify the portfolio of routes and receiver alignments that they give him this upcoming season as he goes into year 2. But like Noel outside as a Z, can play in the slot, use him as a gadget guy. Iowa State would sometimes put him in the backfield and give him handoffs. Like, get creative here. And then I think Drew Pensing's a pretty good offensive coordinator. I think this would probably be his last year as an OC. I think he's a sneaky, 2025 head coaching hire. So yeah, big, or 2026. Yeah, 2026 head coaching hire. So I like Drew Pensing a lot. I think that's a good offense and a good schematic mind to drop Jalen Noel into that offense. And I think he complements Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson really, really well, just because he brings that over-the-top big play threat that those two guys don't really fully bring because they're not burners. So then we get to the Miami Dolphins. I'm going to go Benjamin Morrison here at 48. It's definitely a gamble, but if the medical checks out, you went to the private pro day that he put on, and it looks good, it's a first-round talent. And he's a top 5 corner in the class for sure. It's just, where do you stand on his hip? But, assuming a Jalen Ramsey trade does come, this is a huge position need. It was between Morrison and Eman Worry here. You could totally flip, where I'm going to have Eman Worry go very shortly, you could totally flip Morrison and that guy. Or I'll give you one other honorable mention at that spot too, but I did consider Nick Eman Worry here. But they got to add to that secondary, and honestly, I just think there's a higher ceiling with Morrison than Eman Worry. So that's why I decided to go this route. And yeah, higher position value too, corner versus safety. Then we get to the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going to go Darius Alexander. I just love what this guy could be, both as a pass rusher, but also run defense reinforcements. Really, really quick off the line of scrimmage, fiery, quick hands, wide array of moves to really put that on display. The Senior Bowl can be varied in his defensive alignment. Just, the Bengals are trying to win now. 25-year-old defensive interior guy who can help against the run and has a pass rusher. Maybe he's tapped out. Maybe there's not as high a ceiling as some other guys at the defensive interior position. But for a win now team, this is a plug-and-play option. Seattle Seahawks here at 50. This is going to be where I have Eman Worry. I thought about Shavon Ravel. So you could also change this to where, let's say Eman Worry was the pick to the Dolphins. This could have become Shavon Ravel, and where I have Ravel going could have been Morrison. So it's pretty interchangeable, but secondary was a need for the Dolphins. I think a place the Seahawks can add, and then the team I'm going to give Ravel to obviously makes sense too. But yeah, you're giving Mike McDonald like a more athletic version of Kyle Hamilton, and like not nearly as good of a football player. Hamilton was a top 10 player on my board. Eman Warrior is 56 on my board. So like there's a huge talent disparity. But there's also a disparity in the athletes too. Like I think Hamilton's a better athlete than when he put on at the combine, but like Nick Eman Warrior is a super soldier. So there is some give and take there. But I know you got Devin Witherspoon in the slot, but I would use Eman Warrior in the nickel. I'd use him in the box. Like move this guy all around. And I trust Mike McDonald to be that. I trust his scheme, and I trust him as a defensive play caller as a whole to utilize Eman Warrior in all these different roles and just keep an offense guessing. So, of all places Eman Warrior can go, I think Seattle's probably one of the best spots, maybe the best landing spot for him and his potential long-term outlook. All right, then we get to the Denver Broncos. I'm going to go TJ Sanders here. I really thought about Alfred Collins, but I'm going to go TJ Sanders. Just more of a 3-tech type, and with Zach Allen hitting free agency next year, John Franklin Myers not happy with his situation. Maybe they're looking for more specifically a 3-tech to backfill those guys. I do want to say honorable mention to Alfred Collins. That's what I had in my last handful of mocks. I do think that's your versatile, move them all over the place like JFM is type of run defense reinforcement. So Collins might be a more direct John Franklin Myers replacement, but I think Sanders, whatever ends up happening with Allen, JFM, all those guys who were the 3-techs, plug TJ Sanders in that mix, and he'll backfill that spot pretty well. Then we get to the Seattle Seahawks once again. I'm going to go Alec Amanor here. Obviously, outside X receiver, something they could add, considering they have two guys that are kind of slot Z types with JSN and Cooper Kupp. So Alec Amanor becomes your sacrificial X, but also a 4.44 a guy who can stretch the field, push safeties back, open up the middle field and underneath areas for JSN and Kupp. So this is the type of receiver they're looking to add. I thought about Tez Johnson or Isaiah Bond like in the third round, but ultimately I'd like Ayumanor here, and then I like what I did with them with their 2 third-round picks, but did want to throw that out as an honorable mention. Maybe they could go Jared Wilson here and they go Bond later. I could totally see that, and that's your big play threat. But Ayumanor is a true X. Bond, Johnson, those guys are not. So that was part of the reason I went in this direction. Buccaneers at 53, Nick Scorton falls in your lap. They could use edge reinforcements. Reddick's there on a 1-year deal. This one's just kind of a slam dunk. Months ago we had this as a first-round, player to team landing spot. Now you get to do it in the second round. What's not to love? Green Bay Packers, this is where I'm going to have Chavon Ravel come off the board. So again, you could shuffle some pieces around and make Eman Warrior the pick to the Dolphins, Ravel go to the Seattle Seahawks, and this could become Ben Morrison. Either way you spin it, those 3 teams need to add their secondary. And here for the Packers, this would be a home run. Like, I'm so proud of them. I'm so proud. Like, there were some great words said last night, trust me, but there were no sweeter words than to hear Mark Murphy say for the first time since 2002. Because once you hear that, you're like, let's go. They're going to finally do it. And at Green Bay, like, oh, dude, goosebumps just thinking about it. But this is a moldable ball of clay that now on the other side, where they need to add to that cornerback room, Jeff Hafley, whether he's going to go back to his man coverage roots like he was at BC, if he wants to keep playing more zone coverage like he did last year, Ravel fits into that because he's just a big, physical, long arm, ball skills for days, multiple ball clay, like I said. So there's a lot to work with. It's just going to take some technical refinement and then figure out what Jeff Hafley wants to do. But I think Ravel, you're kind of working with a blank canvas there. So whatever Hafley does decide to do, I think Ravel can fit in that mix. So really, really like that fit. And I think this would be an ideal first 2 picks right here. Golden plus Ravel, like sign me up for that if I'm a Packers fan. Los Angeles Chargers, where I'm going to have Alfred Collins come off the board. Obviously, Puna 4 is gone. That was their best run defender from last year. Collins, move him up and down the defensive line. This is how you backfill a Puna 4 loss right here. This is how you get another run defender into that mix, and a guy, again, that you can move up and down the D-line. He's going to be the glue of that unit, because wherever he's at, wherever your other guys are on that line, whether it's your base 3-4 or if it's you're a nickel, whoever those other 3 or 4 guys are that you want to have on the D-line, figure out who they are, and Collins can line up wherever those guys are, So he brings so much flexibility and versatility to that D-line, which, especially Jesse Minter and, that defensive, that scheme, Mike McDonald, all cut from the same cloth, and how that's becoming so versatile and flexible, and they want to keep offenses guessing, and how they just call plays in general, too. Like, the versatility that Collins brings, I think, fits in really, really well for that scheme. All right, Buffalo Bills, if he's here at 56, I think this is a sprint the card in type situation. Landon Jackson, they like these athletic, long-arm guys, i.e. Greg Rousseau. This would be just a fantastic compliment to Rousseau, but also, working with Joey Bosa, I think this is the guy you use on early downs, and you get Bosa down to 400 snaps a year, try to keep him healthy, and let him be a DPR type. So I also think, Landon Jackson, Joey Bosa, that in and of itself is a good rotation for the Bills. All right. Carolina Panthers, they went receiver in the first round. Love to see that, so now I'm going to give them Braden Swinson. They need to add that pass rush. 3-4 base for Elijah Ajero. Ejiro Evero. I don't know why I keep calling him Elijah. Ejiro Evero. So that's exactly what Swinson is. 3-4 outside linebacker and great closing speed. This is a type of finisher I just don't think they have in that pass rush core. Then we get to the Houston Texans here at 58. Again, earlier I thought about Burden with their first pick, but the advantage was by going Ursery, you can play him on the inside. Maybe he plays one of those 2 tackle spots. And then you go Kyle Williams here at 58. So don't know what Tank Dell's going to be, but there's a lot of Kyle Williams that is almost kind of Tank Dell-ish, but a little bit bigger. But just a great separator. And now if you run man coverage, you have to deal with Williams and Nico Collins. That's just a losing battle. But Collins is also good, finds a soft spot in zones. And then now Kyle Williams, this big play, explosive electric player, pushes safeties back, opens it up for Collins and co. It's a great ad. And then hopefully Tank Dell comes back to 100%, and then that's your receiver trio for years to come. So I really do like that fit there for the Houston Texans. Next up, Baltimore Ravens. I'm going to give him Wyatt Milam. Plug him in at left guard, and he could fill in a pinch at left tackle. This was one of the easier picks. Starks was one of my player team pick number home run hits. Milam's what I had in my last mock, so no need for me to change it here. I think this one makes a ton of sense. Then we get to the Detroit Lions. We're going to have back-to-back edge rushers come off the board here. Lions, I'm going to go Jordan Burch. You can play him stand up, but he can also put his hand in the dirt. But when he does stand up, speed to power for days, explosive athlete, and 285 pounds, brings a whole lot of power. Heavy-handed edge rusher I just don't think the Lions have right now. And then I'm going to go for the Washington Commanders. Since they did not go edge round 1, I am going to go edge here. I have heard they really like JT Tuimoloau. So here at 61, I think that's ultimately going to be their pick if they don't move back. But 3-down edge rusher, TBD on what he's going to be as a pass rusher, but at least early downs, you're getting a long-armed, stout right defender who's going to set a hard edge. So that gets you onto the field, and then we'll see where Dan Quinn can take that pass rush profile. Buffalo Bills, I know Bills fans have not liked when I've done this, but Kevin Winston Jr. is the fit. He's just so much better fit. He's the perfect safety for that scheme, for what Sean McDermott wants to do with those split safety looks, playing a lot of zone coverage, sure tackler. You add a corner in the first round. This is how you continue to bolster that secondary. So, and I get it. Taylor Rapp's a good player. I've always been a Rapp guy. DeMar Hamlin's a 1-year deal there, and Derek Forrest a 1-year deal. This is just, those aren't long-term pieces in my opinion. And Forrest is a good player, but let's slow our boat. Let's not act like he's all world or anything like that. I think Kevin Winston Jr. day one is the highest ceiling you have of those guys. And in a perfect world, Winston Jr. and Cole Bishop, that's your safety tandem. And I think those two guys play off each other really well. Because in a perfect world, if you're not going split safety and you're going to rotate one of these guys in the box, that would be Kevin Winston Jr. And then Cole Bishop has he's got really good free safety over the top instincts. And that was kind of the best part of his tape from a year ago, in my opinion. So if you are going to go single high, Bishop's your guy and you're going to rotate Winston down. But those split safety looks with those two guys too, really, really appealing. So I think long term, that's the best option for the Buffalo Bills. Kansas City Chiefs here at 63. I'm going to go Cam Skattebo. I think they definitely could add to that running back room. I had some people in my mocks where I didn't go running back until later. They were like, you're a hater. We need Skattebo. And you know what? Here, I bow down to your wishes. But, dude, having to tackle Isaiah Pacheco and then Cam Skattebo, that's putting defenses that's sticking them between a rock and a hard place. That is not enjoyable. And Carson Steele. So just 3 thumpers, do their work between the tackles, keep the offense on schedule. I really do like it. And you're having to tackle those body types. Keep in mind, Pacheco's sub 4.40 too. So he's got some big play burst, more so than obviously Cam Skattebo and Carson Steele. But you're having to deal with these big physical runners, and then you also got to go catch Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown in space. Oh, and you got to watch out for that 87 guy here. He's pretty good. So I love how it just different body types, that much more complications for having to tackle these different guys for that Kansas City offense. So I totally get the appeal, and let's do it here at 63. I'm going to go Omar Norman-Lott here for the Eagles. I think this is a fantastic Milton Williams replacement right here. Pass rush specialist, only 400 career snaps against the run at Tennessee over 5 years, which is crazy, but they have Jalen Carter, they have Moro Ojomo, they have guys, and they have Jordan Davis obviously in that mix too. They have run defenders. So I think using Omar Norman-Lott as a pass rush specialist from the inside, this is the team that has the infrastructure to hide his weaknesses and maximize his strength. So what's not to love? All right, on to the third round. Let's go crazy train here for the New York Giants. Jermaine Illuminor can't play forever. Also has some guard flexibility. He's been a better tackle, but whether, you move him inside or you give him one more year tackle, that's a Trapilo. I think that's your long-term answer there at right tackle. And it's kind of one I should have done more in mocks because if he's just going to fall in your lap at 65, why wouldn't you? Kansas City Chiefs back on the clock. I had some other Chiefs fans saying, hey, dude, why do you hate us? Give us a safety. And you look at their roster, yeah, I totally think they could use an over-the-top guy. I'm not ready to quit on Brian Cook, but I do think the ball skills and instincts of Xavier Watts, getting back to what Tyrann Mathieu was for that defense. Not quite as versatile Watts is, that is, but that over-the-top playmaker who's just in the right place at the right time, creating turnovers for that offense. Totally see the appeal for Xavier Watts in Kansas City, so let's do it here at 66. Cleveland Browns, Jerome Ford, low 4.4 guy, so I feel comfortable taking a guy who's, mid to low 4.5s in his 40, and I just want people to tackle Caleb Johnson in January in Cleveland weather. I'm a Steelers fan, so obviously I don't really want to do that, but if I'm a Browns fan, I'm saying, hey, 20 touches a game, tackle Caleb Johnson in sub 32 degree weather, sub 20 degree weather, let's be honest with ourselves. Love that, and I do think him and Ford complement each other really, really well. To the Raiders, I thought about Jalen Royals here, and Royals is ranked higher, and you could play Royals as the X, so I don't hate that whatsoever. But something about Trey Harris kind of feels like he might be a Pete Carroll type, and that might be more the prototypical X receiver, a little bit bigger. But you do need to add to his route tree. And I mean, like Jalen Royals, it's a lot of hitches and slants too. So that's a route tree that needs a lot more added to it as well. So Harris or Royals, I think both make a lot of sense. And where I have Royals going, you could drop Trey Harris in that spot, and I think it makes a lot of sense. So pick your X receiver of choice there for the Raiders. I'll go with Trey Harris. Just something telling me that's their guy. All right. Pick number 69, which is nice. We'll go Princely Umanmielen. I do think the Patriots could use one more pass rusher. They obviously move on from Josh Uche at the deadline. Let's make Umanmielen our new DPR pass rush specialist. On to pick 70. I'm going to go Josh Farmer. Obviously, with the trade back, they go Travis Hunter. Announce him as a receiver. I did also hear apparently corner was in there too, but I heard receiver first, and that's why I was like, oh my God, there it is. They did it. But I'm going to go Josh Farmer. Low moving cost, long arms, bull in a China shop type. And I think right next to Eric Armstead in specific, like two long arm fiends, I think that would be a really fun pairing on the inside of that Jaguars defensive line. Pick 71. I'm a little torn on this. I'm going to go Jack Bech. One part of me is like, because he had that awesome piece. I think it was with The Athletic. But he's like, you're not just drafting me, you're getting 2 for 1. It's me and Tiger throughout my entire career. You're getting this, again, goosebumps on my arm just hearing that. Obviously a tragic story, and he was awesome at Senior Bowl, not even a month after that. So then to send him to New Orleans, there's something that's like really powerful about that. And it's a chance that, again, I'm playing with Tiger, we're doing this together, and you go back to that place, and hopefully he has like a Hall of Fame career, and this becomes a steal of a pick. But also, is that like too much to put on a guy? Like I could see where there's like one team he doesn't want to go to, and that being New Orleans, because like how do you want to, can you live with that and carry that and see that, the French corridor every day? I don't know. But I'm going to do it here. But Saints fans, let me know. Or like just people who have something to say about this. I'd be curious your input. On one side, it's like an awesome story and like a chance for him to continue that legacy and do this with his brother. On the other side, it's like maybe any other team, ideally for Jack Bech. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn on it, but he is the exact type of receiver they don't have. That guy who's going to do the dirty work, middle of the field. He could be an X, underneath. They got 3 field stretchers in Shaheed, Olave, and Brandon Cooks. Who's that guy working the underneath intermediate stuff? That's where I think Jack Bech really is a great fit for that Kellen Moore offense. All right, let me know your thoughts on that. To the Chicago Bears, I'm going to go defensive interior. They just don't have a great run defender. CJ West, number 72 on the PFF board, number 72 in this mock draft. Really solid value. I'm a little bit lower on him on my big board, but still get him in this range. Again, just the run defender I don't think the Bears have right now. So just go ahead and add him into that mix with Gervon Dexter, Zach Pickens, and Grady Jarrett. Then we get to the Jets. I'm going to go safety here. Safety is just one of those spots where I think the Jets could use an upgrade. Makuba, free safety, can play him in the box, can play him in the slot. So versatile guy that I think Aaron Glenn could have a whole lot of fun just moving around across the defense. Carolina Panthers at 74. I'm going to go Darian Porter here. I don't think Mike Jackson stops you from drafting a potential successor. It's like a 2-year, $10 million deal, so it's nothing expensive whatsoever. And Porter, great instincts, awesome length, fantastic athletic profile. Take a swing of the bat here at 74. This is multiple ball of clay that just needs more experience, and it's worth a swing of the bat here at 74. All right, to the 49ers at 75. In a perfect world, I'd get him like a left guard who'd become a left tackle in the future, but instead, I'm going to go Marcus Bowe, and it's twofold. You either play him at left guard, awesome plug-and-play option there. He also could be your future long-term center. Like Jake Brendel is just on this like perennial 1-year cycle with the 49ers, just like when is he going to sign that 1-year deal? I see Bowe as a center, to be honest with you, so I think long-term that would be like where I'd most want to see him in San Francisco. But for the immediacy, you could play him at left guard, get a big-time upgrade on that offensive line at that spot. All right, next up, Dallas Cowboys at 76. This is where I'm going to have Jalen Royals go, so again, you could drop Trey Harris in the spot and just flip where these guys went. But outside receiver who you could also move in the slot, play inside, outside with Lamb and Royals, kind of move them all around. Good route tree, low 4.4 speed, so we can force the defense to respect his over-the-top stuff. Good after the catch as well, too. So I really like that as a compliment to CeeDee Lamb. And I think a really good solid value there at 76. So don't have to do it in the first round, which obviously they didn't. Ted McMillan was gone. That sounded like their guy, but they pivot to Booker. Then we go running back second round. Royals were adding some more explosiveness, some more weapons to that offense for Dak Prescott. All right, to the New England Patriots, once again, I'm going to go Dylan Sampson. I think this team just needs a home run threat. I do think Sampson's more of a zone guy than gap, but there's some okay gap stuff on his tape as well, and I'm assuming that McCown's just going to kind of stick with his tried and true, mostly gap, run scheme. So a little bit of a TBD there, but they can also ease him into it because they have, Ramondre Stevenson, who's probably going to lead the way off rip. But Sampson right away, probably better than Antonio Gibson as a pure runner. And then you can also buy Sampson time to grow as a pass catcher because that's primarily what Antonio Gibson's there for. Also, I just love Sampson. 1 year starter, but it's compared to Stevenson and Gibson, where fumbles have been such a huge concern for those two, Sampson's pretty good with the football in his hand. So, like that, obviously, if you're a New England Patriots fan. All right, to the Arizona Cardinals at 78. I'm going to go Tate Ratledge. I think this is a plug-and-play guy at right guard for you. So not much more to explain there. Good scheme fit, ton of playing experience, really good athlete. They have a hole at right guard. Plug this guy right on in there. Same is true for the Houston Texans. Don't worry, Texans fans. I'm not neglecting you any further. We're going to go Jonas Savaiinaea. Plug him in at right guard. He also could be a contingency for you at right tackle because if Blake Fisher doesn't take a step forward there, you might want to start considering what Savaiinaea could look like for you as a long-term long-term tackle option. So home run fit. They can use him at guard or tackle, just somewhere there on the right side. Indianapolis Colts, going to stick with what I had in my last mock. I'm going to go Femi Oladejo here. There's just something telling me that that's the developmental edge rusher they'd be willing to take a shot on, but also could be an impact player against the run right away. And I think Samson Ebukam in a lot of ways is a really good player for Oladejo to learn from, and in a lot of ways similar strengths and areas where Ebukam's gotten better. I need to see Oladejo take a step forward too. So I think that's a really good mentor-mentee potential relationship there in Indianapolis. To these Cincinnati Bengals, I'm going to go Demetrius Knight. Sounds like a Jermaine Pratt trade is going to be imminent. It may happen this weekend. So if they do that, Demetrius Knight, backfill that spot, get younger, get cheaper at that position, start over. In a perfect world, like I could see where Al Golden maybe like Schlesinger more. And you also could go Jack Kaiser later. That was something I did in my last mock, just taking Kaiser in the 4th or 5th round. Totally makes sense. But I'll go with the slightly, not slightly, but I have Knight ranked a handful of spots higher in my linebacker ranking, so we'll opt for the better player versus the Al Golden Jack Kaiser relationship. But did think about Anthony Belton here and just have him next to Orlando Brown Jr. with Marius Mims and just have these absolute monsters on that offensive line. There's a lot of that. Sounds a lot of fun too. And then you go Kaiser later on. So tell me if you're a Bengals fan what you would do there. Seattle Seahawks would go Jared Wilson. I was a Oluwatimi guy coming out of Michigan. Was kind of surprised he fell to the 6th round, but maybe that was for a reason. Wilson's a perfect scheme fit. Best 40 time of any center in combine history. Again, perfect scheme fit for Clayton Kubiak in that wide zone to zone-based offense. So, home run fit there. Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, no word from Aaron Rodgers. I think Kyle McCord could be the guy, but I also think Jalen Milroe is probably the guy for them. So, we'll make Jalen Milroe the pick and hope he doesn't have to start week 1 because I think it's going to take some time to develop Milroe, which hopefully we hear from Aaron Rodgers because I don't want Mason Rudolph starting week 1 either. So, the Steelers have put themselves stuck between a rock and a hard place because they lost out on Justin Fields. So this is where they get. On to pick number 84. I'm going to go Azariah Thomas here to the Buccaneers. Jamel Dean, he's battled some injuries. He's been up and down a little bit. I do think outside corner is a spot where they can add low moving cost. Thomas is not nearly the athlete of a Zion McCollum or a Jamel Dean was coming out, but specifically with the 40. But man press stuff, that kind of speaks to Todd Bowles and his background. So wouldn't be shocked if they're willing to take a shot on him and just use him as outside corner depth, and then we'll see where this Jamel Dean saga kind of takes us in Tampa Bay. All right, to the Broncos. I'm going to go Terrence Ferguson here. You bring in Evan Ingram, but he played 9 games last year. He's 30 years old. Actually, might be 31, but he's into his 30s. He's not necessarily a long-term fix, and he's on, he's based on a 1-year deal, so he is on a 1-year deal, actually. So, go find that tight end of the future. And also, Ferguson can play inline, and if that frees up Ingram to do more slot, H-back stuff, get him off the line of scrimmage where he's not necessarily a great blocker, that might be all the better for that entire offense and for Evan Ingram as a whole. Los Angeles Chargers, Josiah Stewart. They could use one more edge rusher, and I think they have the infrastructure. Tuli Tuipulotu, Khalil Mack, those guys can play early downs, can play the run. Josiah Stewart becomes your DPR specialist. Michigan overlap, of course, had to do it, at least for one of these picks. So I think that's a home run fit. I think it's a good value for a guy like Josiah Stewart. Green Bay Packers next up at 87. I thought about defensive interior, Vernon Broughton here, but I'm going to go Elijah Roberts, him or Ivy, but Roberts is the better athlete, so I'm going to go with Roberts here. They're both very similar. They're side by side on my big board, so either one here, I'm content with it. Heavy-handed edge rushers that I just don't feel like they totally have. And Agbury can do it, and Rashawn Gary can do some of it, but that's definitely Roberts and Ivy's calling card. So I like adding those guys in the mix, and ultimately, as much as I like an Agbury, and there's been some high highs there for Gary. Last year they just needed more production out of those guys, and hopefully Roberts or Ivy brings that to them. To the Jaguars here at 88, I'm going to go with Harold Fannin Jr. They have Brenton Strange, who I think could be that inline tight end, and then that frees up Harold Fannin Jr. to be that H-back. And if you're going to make a trade up to go get Travis Hunter to be your receiver to go with BTJ, and you're trying to unlock Trevor Lawrence, what's one more weapon? And I think, Liam Cohen's a good offensive mind. I know we didn't see him use a whole lot of the tight end in that Tampa Bay offense last year, except for when they had catastrophic injuries and Cade Otton was kind of their number one target. And, fact of the matter was, Otton had him in fantasy. He was pretty productive, and he had some big games. So I think Liam Cohen's just a good offensive mind, and he works with the pieces he has. So Harold Fannin, this versatile guy, moves all around, ideally as an H-back or off the line of scrimmage. I think this is a good place for him to go to be able to fit into that. And it's a good offense to play under. Like, if you're working with Liam Cohen, I think that's one of the better spots for Harold Fannin to go. All right, Houston Texans back on the clock here. I'm going to go Shamar Turner. I do think this is a team that could add that defensive interior. Turner lined up all over the place over the last 2 years at A&M. If he gets back to 100%, I think D'Amico Ryans is one of those guys I trust to get Turner to his upper levels of play. 23 tapes better than 24, and that was at edge, but just use him up and down the D-line, and specifically third and longs, passing situations, move this guy inside, let him pin his ears back. There's some potential to be had there, and I think it's worth a swing of the bat at 89. Rams here at 90. I'm going to go Dorian Strong. I think in a perfect world, Dorian Strong's playing off coverage in a zone-heavy defense, and that's exactly what the Rams are going to do. So home run fit, and they could definitely use some reinforcements there on the outside. If I see a Kelly Witherspoon as your CB1 on a roster, yeah, we got to add to that room. And I like Darius Williams, but even he, age is starting to catch up to him. So we gotta get younger and cheaper, and at this point, frankly, more athletic in the secondary. To the Ravens here at pick number 91. This is where I'm going to have Jared Ivey come off the board. Him or Savion Jones is like a 3-tech to add in the mix. I think makes a lot of sense. Good compliment opposite of Justin Madubuike there on the inside as well, too. So I like that a good bit. And it just feels like a Ravens type of move. Especially Ivey didn't have a great testing, but he's just a good football player. All that kind of, again, speaks to just like third-round draft tendencies for the Ravens. Just draft good football players, then they end up working out. So much to my chagrin as a Steelers fan. All right, pick number 92 for the Seattle Seahawks. I'm going to go Savion Jones. I don't think I had a single mock draft where I went edge, but if you look at the Tank Lawrence contract, they can cut him as early as next year. And Savion Jones is a really nice guy to learn from Tank Lawrence and be that, edge-setting, high-level run defender, big body physical edge type. So I'm kind of factoring this pick as like, hey, we're going to use Tank Lawrence for a year. Savion Jones, learn as much as you can. By year 2, you're stepping into his role, and we're going to let Tank Lawrence walk out the door, and we're going to get the cap savings out of it. So that was kind of my thinking here for the Seahawks at 92. New Orleans Saints here at 93. I'm going to go Jacob Parrish. They can just get better in the slot as long as the plan is to move Alontae Taylor out wide, him and Kool-Aid McKinstry. That's your boundary corners. They need to get a guy in the slot, and I think Jacob Parrish will be one of the best slot corners out of this draft, maybe the best slot corner out of this draft, depending on where Barron and Eman Worry ultimately are lined up. But yeah, Parrish, love him there. Physical guy, a little short, but 191 is a good weight for him. And just reinforces that secondary in New Orleans. To the Cleveland Browns. We haven't gone offensive line yet. Would love to give them a left tackle potential of the future. I don't know if Charles Grant can do it right away, but he is a good scheme fit for Kevin Stefanski. Charles Grant on the move is the best thing that he has and he brings to the table. So for a zone to wide zone offense and Kevin Stefanski, yeah, checks that box. Probably need to add a little bit of weight at 311 at the combine, and he's added a lot of weight, right? Like William and Mary's listed at 300, so like he's been bulking this entire time, and he's been able to maintain his movement skills too. So that's great. Looked really fluid at the combine. Really good scheme fit. Don't know if you could trust him right away, which kind of sucks. So does that mean it's DeJuan Jones, Jack Conklin week 1 for the Browns? Don't love that, but by year 2, I think Charles Grant could become a starter for the Cleveland offense. All right, Kansas City Chiefs here at 95. This is where we're going to have Vernon Broughton come off the board. Just get one more high-level pass rush threat from the inside. You're going to move Chris Jones all around, but Broughton backfilling the Treshaun Wharton signing as he goes to Carolina. Love that fit. Love that value there at 95. All right, to the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to go Cameron Williams here. This is just Howie Roseman, drafted a year or 2 ahead. Williams, had he come out in 2026 versus 25, he might have been a first-round pick. there's first round talent there. He just needs coaching and refinement and more experience, frankly. So go send him to Jeff Stoutland University. Let him learn from the best right tackle of my generation, Lane Johnson. Home run spot for Cameron Williams to go to if he's comfortable not playing for a year or two. Minnesota Vikings. I thought about RJ Harvey here just for the fun of it. Again, I really do like that scheme fit. But instead, I'm going to go with Noah Williams. I think they could add one more corner to that mix. And I think in a perfect world, Brian Flores would like to run more man press. That's kind of his roots coming from New England. So Noah Williams is that big physical corner, wants to get in your face, but he's got ball skills too. And Brian Flores is looking for turnovers too. So I think the ball skills and instincts there for Noah Williams make a lot of sense for that Flores defense. Miami Dolphins at 98. We haven't gone into your offensive line yet, and I'm going to give you a perfect scheme fit. Dylan Fairchild, very good scheme fit for the zone to wide zone of Mike McDaniel's offense. Very good athlete and a left guard at Georgia. And Liam Eichenberg at this point cannot be trusted to be a starting left guard for Miami. So plug and play option there in Fairchild. Houston Texans at 99. I think they can add to that running back room. Nick Haley, I think, is going to run more gap. So Damian Martinez, he's got experience in zone and gap, took huge strides forward this year as a pass protector, which is a huge plus to take him inside the top 100. And I think him plus Mixon sign me up for that. You also have Dameon Pierce, so if you're going back to gap scheme stuff, like keep an eye out for Dameon Pierce. That could be an interesting ad. 49ers, in fantasy, that is an interesting ad, like draft and stash them. Anyways, pick number 100 for the 49ers. Call me lazy. I'm going to go Savion Williams. They lose Deebo Samuel, so go draft. If you can't get Burden, go draft the next best thing and Savion Williams. Bowl skills, great yards after the catch ability, very good athlete, very unique build. Just a work in progress as a route runner. But Shanahan's going to scheme you open anyway, so just get that type of athlete and that type of yards after the catch ability into that scheme. All right, to the Atlanta Falcons. Let's just have some fun here. I would have loved to see Jack Best be the fit, but Torrey Horton as an outside X receiver, as they've moved Drake London primarily as a slot guy, sign me up for that. And also like field stretching ability with Michael Penix's arm. Yes, all the way around. So I really like that fit. And honestly, he should go higher than this, but with the Jags already going to receiver, that kind of took him off the board there at 88. So maybe he's an option for some other team a little bit earlier than this, but he fell here to 101, and I think he's definitely an upgrade over Ray McLeod and Darnell Mooney and those types. Last pick of this day 2 mock draft is going to be Miles Frazier, interior offensive lineman from LSU. I think the Lions, specifically at left guard, just could use a contingency. Graham Glasnow's played guard and center for you. Ragnow's battled some injuries, so you have some flexibility. If Ragnow goes down, Glasnow slides over, Frazier steps into that left guard spot. Or, Glasnow's there on a 1-year deal. You're basically setting this up for Miles Frazier to take over as the starting left guard by year 2 of that rookie contract. So it's kind of twofold. Helps them in the immediacy for depth. But then long term, I do think he could be a starter for that Lions offensive line. But guys, that is going to do it for my day 2 mock draft. And this is going to be the last 2025 mock draft I do, and this one was only the second and third round. So it's not a full mock draft, but this will be the last thing that you see, 2025 mock draft, in the title here on the 32 Beat Writers YouTube channel. So it is crazy that we are here. But guys, want to showcase each and every pick from this day 2 mock. I cannot wait for the action to get underway tonight. I think it's going to be really exciting. This is kind of like the meat and potatoes of the draft in a lot of ways. In my eyes, this is where the value is most at its supreme. So that's kind of what the hard part of doing this mock was, but that's what makes it very fun tonight as we get to watch. So let me know your thoughts. Who are you keeping an eye on? Ultimately, let's get to the point of this conversation. Where does Shedeur Sanders go? I know that's what everyone wants to talk about. I've got to go into Cleveland at 33, but maybe it's the Steelers trading George Pickens. He's now followed him on Instagram, so maybe they use him as an asset to move up from 83, and that's how they get Shedeur Sanders. Going to be really interesting, but let me know your thoughts on this day 2 mock and where does Shedeur Sanders go. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Hit some likes. Hit the like button. We're going to have our overall draft grades out at the end of this weekend. Also, if you're watching on X, be sure to give us a follow here. You can also follow me on Twitter at TJ Wingert, spelled Wengert. All right, that's enough plugging. That's enough asking and calling for favors from y'all. But hope you guys enjoyed the mock. Hope you enjoyed day 2 of the NFL draft. Until next time, my name is Tej, and we are signing off.